today is looking into what is included in the AEC collections. We're going to focus on the building side of things. We're going to look at some workflow efficiencies in 3D Studio Max. I'm going to get into AutoCAD and what's new, but I'm going to talk about my favorite tool and the new feature of 2022. We'll get into the interoperability pieces of advanced steel, and then the bulk of the presentation is going to evolve around Revit and all the improvements within the Revit software. So let's get started with the collection overview. So what is AEC Collections? We're going to focus again on the building side of things, but when you go to the website and you go to your downloads, this is what you're getting. So the big bulk of the things what you're seeing on this screen is what we would call the hero products and or the flagship products. So we have Revit, which is going to be our BIM solution for architecture, MEP, and structure. We have AutoCAD, and AutoCAD is not just plain AutoCAD, it's AutoCAD all in one. And that means that you have access to all the AutoCAD flavors, including AutoCAD MEP, AutoCAD for architecture, and so forth. We have Navisworks, which is going to be our workhorse for class detection and timelines. And we have this new product called Autodesk Docs. And Autodesk Docs allows us to organize and distribute and share files within the Autodesk Cloud Solution platform. After all of that, we have all of these as well. So when you have AEC collections, if you're looking to purchase AEC collections, these are some of the add-in pieces that we can do to start working on our workflow. So advanced steel, which we'll get into a little later on, is basically a 3D modeling software that helps us in our structural steel automation and fabrication. It's based upon AutoCAD. We have Insight, which is our online service to help architects and engineers create more energy efficient buildings. We have Formit, which is our conceptual design tool. Kind of think of Formit as the SketchUp flavor within our collections here. We have 3D Studio Max, and people think of 3D Studio Max as video games and movies, which it is, but in our purposes here, and more importantly, it's for high-end advanced presentation and rendering walkthroughs. We have Robot Structural Analysis, which is going to be our analysis tool that allows us to go off and put in loads and calculations to make sure that our building stands. And then we have at the very bottom Autodesk Drive, and Autodesk Drive really I see is kind of going away. And the reason why I say that is because it's a online storage place to share information, and really that's what Docs, Autodesk Docs is all about. So I can see that eventually kind of being wrapped up into the Docs side of the world. So with all of that, let's get into 3ds Max and some of the new features and enhancements in there. So looking at all the Max things, there's 20 plus new or improved features going along here. And what I want to focus on in this particular presentation, since we're talking about interoperability and working in the collections, is really going to be about that middle section there about textures and rendering. So we're using the Arnold render engine. There's a feature called Bloom, or as we would call it also Glow, and is a post-process effect. This has been added to the lens and effect imager for blur pixels, excuse me. We have the optics denoiser, which is now available as a post-processing effect. We get down to the render side of things, and really what they did with the rendering piece of it is they gave us a new rendering configuration window to help speed up and make it look a little more snappier. The break to texture option, they changed the interface to make it a little more simpler, basically to offer us easier navigation to select the baked map types by group rendering elements under a common mapping name. And then the last one that we have here is viewports. And really what they've done is when we have a floating viewport, we now have the ability to make that full screen and borderless view. So basically it gives us a lot more functionality and faster integration within the rendering aspects of Max. All right, next step, AutoCAD. So I've been using AutoCAD as seen in that previous slide since release 1.4. And I actually have a big 8.5-ish disk sitting here on my wall. at every release of AutoCAD, there is something that intrigues me and something new. And I still do board drafting. I still get out there and get on my board over here, and I still do hand stuff, and I still pop into AutoCAD to do certain things. But even though Revit is my main design tool, I still will use some of these things. So looking at some of the brand new features, we have Count, which allows us to quickly and accurately count instances of objects within the drawing. We have Trace, which provides a safe place to collaborate with our drawings up on the web using the AutoCAD web or the mobile app. And the important part of this is when you're doing it up on the web, you're not going to have any fear of altering the existing drawing down on your site. We have a share, so if you're worried about that, we could share, which is going to be copying a link of your current drawing for editing purposes on AutoCAD web apps, but it also will bring in the X references and any images that you possibly have within that as well. And then if you do have collections and not just plain Jane AutoCAD, then you're going to have the ability to use the push to docs feature. And really what push to docs feature does is pushes your drawing files up to the cloud as a PDF, so you're allowing other team members out in the field to view those documentation. Under the enhanced features, we've got a good handful of those. I guess my favorite one in this little category is going to be the floating windows. So you can see on the screen here in the little image that we have there, it's kind of floating. So if you've been in Revit before, in the latest versions, you're able to pull that tab off and put it on a second or third monitor. We can now do that within AutoCAD. We have a new redesigned Start tab. They're always trying to improve that graphics performance to make it faster and easier to use. And they've done a nice job of doing customizable installations. So a great interface for that. But my favorite tool is the Count. And so remember, this allows us to quickly and accurately count instances of objects within the drawing. So let's go take a look at that one. All right, so here's my AutoCAD. So you can see the new startup screen that we're seeing over there. And basically we got our recently used ones. But over here, if we're gonna go and look at stuff online, we can go off into our AutoCAD mobile apps and so forth, or we can start new files. I'm gonna go and get into my sample file here. And I'll just pan this over a little bit here. And so what I wanna do is I wanna look at that count option. We're gonna find count under the view tab. We're gonna pop over here to count under panel. And right now I have it set up for blocks. So you can see that it's giving me a count of all the blocks. I have 66 of those. And what I want to do is I actually want to create a table of that or a schedule. So I'm going to go and hit this little button right there. I'm going to grab all of them and I'm going to go and say, let's insert that. There we go. And I'll zoom up a little closer. And I have a new wheel or a new mouse, and it's really, really quick. So forgive me if I'm a bit over the place in the presentation. And there it is. So I'm going to go and zoom up a little closer to it. This is fields. So when you look at that, you can see that we have 66 chairs in there. And if I was to go off and grab that chair and let's copy it. And let's copy from there over to here. You're going to see right away that over here in count, it updated that count. The table doesn't, but that's just a field. And if you know AutoCAD and you know fields, you just need a major operation to fix that, which is a regen. So if I just do a regen, it's automatically going to update for me. Now, here's one of the beauty pieces of this count, because you guys never would explode a block, would you? Never do anything to that nature. So if I go off here and I'm gonna explode my block here, what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna switches it over to 66. And again, now we're getting a little warning happening here. And again, if I do a regen on my view, it's gonna come back to my table being 66. Now I'm going to zoom out here for this next option. If I simply click on this warning piece right here and tell me what's going on, it's coming down and saying, hey, you got one warning and there's a block exploded. If I pick on this right here, and you can actually see that it's highlighting right now up here, but if I click on that, it's going to zoom up to that block and allow me to do some editing and fixing of that. So it shouldn't have been exploded. I can now replace it with the accurate number and the accurate piece. Great functionality here in the AutoCAD. right. Moving on to advanced steel. So again, remember, advanced steel is an AutoCAD-based software that allows us to create 3D documentation and modeling for steel. And they've added 12 plus features that are new and improved. But remember that since it's AutoCAD, all of the AutoCAD functionality is with it as well. So you can see that they split this up into modeling tools, documentation, interoperability, and localization. The main hole positioning during beam sketch also would be considered to be column sketches, if you will. In the past, in other words, 2021 and down, when you were stretching out the beams or stretching out the columns, doing anything to lengthen that, what was happening is your holes were kind of moving with it. So now we have a default functionality to say keep those in place or maintain those or maintain that information. Now, when it comes to the Advanced Steel 2022 extension for Revit, basically this enhances our workflow for steel detailers and fabrication to work better with the Revit back and forth workflow. Exploding drawing enhancement. When you hear that word explode, you always kind of get fearful for that. And what they've done in this is allows us to have a configuration for call out symbols, title displays, along with other drawn entities. And that gives us the ability now to assign layers and colors and line types to be used for those things when we explode them. All right, so I have a little video on this one here. So again, remember in the earlier versions, it controls the hole placement at times were difficult. So you can see when I stretched that, those holes were going. So in our 22 versions, I'm gonna go and search for keyholes and look at that name. That name is keep hole position constraints relative to attach during stretching. Basically what we're saying here is once we have that set and we use the stretch, the trim, the extend tool, or the lengthen tool, those holes are going to maintain their position of where they were created at. That gives us better control over positioning of our holes. All right, let's get into Revit. I want you to sit back and take a look at the slide. Look at all the things they did, and all the features we have actually fit on 2 slides. And so what we did here, or what Autodesk did in this case, is bring everything together into 4 categories. So we have developer tools, which gets into more functionality for the API. They did some new stuff with Dynamo. We get into documentation and efficiency, and you're looking at that. They did some great stuff when it comes to tagging. We've got grids and 3D views now. We've got some sloping information for ramps and elevations, excuse me. We've got a nice one of my about time features of show wall core. Over in interoperability, we've got the ability to now have 2D PDF exports. We've got some Rhino linking. They did some nice workflows when it comes to format, and you just go on from there. And if we pop over here to the very first slide again on design productivity, just a whole slew of new features, some little and some major. So looking at, we got tapered walls available to us now, did a major work on generative design for us. We've got a whole handful of reinforcement functionality, and what released in the last 5 years hasn't had some type of reinforcement functionality within Revit. We've got some improvements on our fabrication modeling aspect. So altogether, over 80 plus new or improved features in this release. The last time we had something like that really was, in my mind, goes back to release 14 of AutoCAD and release 2000 in AutoCAD, where we had so many new things that made a major impact of what we're doing. So let's start off with design productivity. So let's go with tapered walls. Look at that. So we have the ability now to set up a cross section, set up a exterior angle, an interior angle, and then also tell where that's going to be. It's going to be the top of the wall, the bottom of the wall, or the base of the wall. Now think about this workflow in the past. What we had to do back in the old days was do an in-place family to do this. And so we just cut our time down dramatically just to be able to do tapered walls. Family categories and improvements, just look at all the different things we now have. So talk about doing different types of workflows for schedules to get things the way that we want to have. We have audio visual devices, we have fire protection, we have food service equipment, we have hardscapes over in our family category parameters. Over in material takeoffs, we have fascia, gutters, and soffits. We have landings for stairs, runs, and supports for stairs. So we have a whole bunch of new functionality here within our scheduling and our parameters that we can take advantage of. Reinforcement, just a lot of reinforcement pieces. This particular one I like, it's like a two-pick family. So if you've ever done any of the two-pick families before, really you're picking a spot and you're picking a spot and it draws what you have. So what we're doing is we're setting up what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and it basically draws that information. One of the problems with working with reinforcement in the past was trying to move a piece of reinforcement with inside of a set and or remove those pieces. And now we have a nice functionality that allows us to move and allows us to remove sections of beam, especially when you're looking at this picture where we've got a hole going on there that we have some I'm gonna say a piece of ductwork coming through. Or a pipe. Now, when it comes to fabrication improvements, just a whole bunch of things that they did to tightly wind up. So in the past, we had some problems with some connectivity. You can see at the picture up above there that we have some holes, but those things are being fixed and taken care of when it comes to the 2022 release. For the architectural side, we had the path of travel, if you will. Now we have 4 new options within that to help us out. So we have, 3 options. We have multiple paths, so we can set up a distance for multiple paths. We can set up one-way indicators, and we have this people content area, and basically it's a buffer to go where you have to go around. And then we have spatial grids, which allows us to overlap our room. So we have a room, we're allowed to use the spatial grid to help us aid in distribution of our physical distance requirements. All right, let's go take a look at that. So I'm going to start off with reinforcement. So I'll pop on over here for the structure tab. Here's our new button. I'll go to reinforcement first, and here's our new button. Pan this over and zoom up maybe a little bit. 2 point. There we go. So as soon as I pick that, set up what am I going to do? I'm going to go and say, let's do the nearest face. We're going to go out and say it's going to be horizontal. We could go vertical, and then my rebar placement is going to be maximum spacing 4 inches. And then simply, I'm just going to pick and pick. And it's basically drawing that information for us. That was just very, very slick, very cool. Now, once I have that information, if I want to make changes to it, again, I can click onto it, and we have the edit bar button up here on the ribbon. I'm going to go and click on that, and that allows me to get into it. I'll zoom up a little closer. And if I click on this one, I can say, well, I really want that to be, let's say 2 inches here, and it moves that one 2 inches. So I get into that 2-pick family and move things around. And in this case, what I want to do is pick all 4 of these with my control button. There we go, all of those. And I want to go ahead and delete those. So I'll just go ahead and say remove bars. And now I have a nice little space to put in a hole by design. Very cool. Next one I want to talk about is going to be the multi-path option. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to my Analyze tab. I'm going to go and grab multiple path. I'm going to set this path up to be 2 feet apart, 9 inches. There we go. And I'm going to pick here, and I'm going to pick here. And what it will do is says, okay, we created 3 paths that are 2 feet apart. Since we said 2 feet apart, what it actually did was it said that, okay, we can do that one. And this is easy just to go off and say, well, I don't really need that one. So I can actually delete that one. Okay. Now I'm going to go and delete these again, and I'm going to add some more functionality to this. There we go. I want to go off and say one-way direction. So these doors only open one way. Get a little closer here. Now, when I do this, you got to make sure that it's actually being nice and tight to this. I can go here, 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 but not out here because it does find a little gap in there, so it doesn't see that. So we want to make sure that we place it appropriately. There we go. And then again, I'll go ahead and run my multiple path, 2 feet. We'll go here to here. And you can see it created 2 paths this time. And so it's avoiding these doors, went through up in here, and then it went outside. Okay, we're gonna add a little more difficulty to this, so let's do an undo. I wanna add the people to it, and I'm gonna put a person kind of right there. So think about this is basically a type of generic block that it sees just for this pathing issue. And I'll put one right there, and we'll see what we get now when I do my multiple path. So 2 feet again, pick there, and I'll pick outside the building, and it created 2 paths for us. So it felt that it was easier to scoot along around here through that than versus come up, over, and then scoot around that to get there. So 2 great, or handful of great pieces for that. And I'm gonna zoom up onto my office space here to this last one, which is our spatial grid. So remember, this is a visual representation of distances for us. And we can set this up as either a square or a hexagon, but you can see the pretty pictures down below there. We have, distances between the centers. We're gonna go ahead and say I want 6 feet. That's our common rule right now. I'll say okay. And then what you're doing is you're actually picking on the room. So you can do this multiple rooms, if you will, and then we just finish it off. And I said it was going to be the squares. So I'll go and undo that, and I'll do it again just so you can see the differences of hexagons. There you go. So great visualization to make sure that we're keeping, in this case, our 6-foot social distancing. All right, this next one is a video on the fabrication side of things. So I'm gonna go ahead and just close out of my Revit file and pop back over to my PowerPoint. All right, so in 2021 is what we're gonna see right off the bat here. We had issues with justification, transitions, and non-center tapping. These things would be removed from the conversion of design intent elements. In 2022, these fabrication parts are correctly placed in the location as design intent. These tools have been optimized to support our branch offsetting, our justifications, and equipment mapping without the dependency of our design lines. The quick connect lets you fill the gaps between a fitting and a straight section. And we're allowed to drag end connectors to straight sections to autofill the connections regardless of the size. And finally, I think my favorite one here, the route fill tool allows us to use added parts between 2 connected openings, giving us 1 or more options for our solution. All right. Hopping over to interoperability. All right, so again, like I said earlier, there's some great improvements when it comes to the workflow between Revit and Format. And I think this is the favorite one of the 2, which basically allows me to click a 3D sketch button in Revit, load over my content or my project up into format and allow me to do conceptual or design information over in format, and then bring that back over into Revit. It's going to bring over materials. It's going to bring over visibility controls for us. It's just a nice little thing for our conceptual design workflow. In our 2021 version, we had the ability to share 3D views. And so our new feature in 2022 gives us the ability to share not only our 3D views, but also our 2D views and our sheet views. And the intent of this is to be able to send people views and markup abilities of our views or our sheets that don't have the ability to do that with any of our cloud solutions and or modify the file's intent. So you can send this off to an owner. They can look at it without having to get into any of the major pieces of how to use the software. It's pretty straightforward. We now have the ability to export out PDFs without having to print. So think about having to set up a printer and getting all that stuff working. This is going to act pretty close to the same way as exporting out DWG files or DXF files, helping improve our documentation efficiency. So let's pop into those. There we go. We'll start off with format. All right, so under my conceptual or massing and site section, we have our 3D sketch. And the caveat for this is don't launch format, because it's gonna launch another format based upon this question right here. Which one do you want to use? I'm gonna use the top one, launch format, with all of my visible content that we're seeing in this particular view. So it's gonna launch our format for us. All right, so now I'm gonna ready to set up my view. So I'm gonna pop up here to format. I'm gonna say, let's do a front view. Roll my mouse slowly. And then I'm gonna pop over here to my sketch button here, my little pencil. I'm gonna draw some lines, and I'm gonna be accurate for the presentation here. So I'm just gonna draw myself a little rectangle here. And I am not a 100% format person, but there we go. We got that in there. I'm gonna go ahead and pop back into my 3D view, get a little closer to it. And you can see it, there it is. And let's see if I can pull it out. Nope. Undo that one because I don't want to mess that one up. Oop, I messed that up, so let's redo. Sorry about that, folks. Let's draw that in there. There we go. Stretched it out. Perfect. All right, now what I want to do is add some material to it. So I'll pop over here to my woods. And let's grab, let's say, that piece of wood there. And what I want to do is kind of tab to get the whole thing, and then escape out when I'm done. You can see that it got nice little wood grain there. I'm pretty happy with this. I know you're loving my design. I'm gonna pop over here to this little button right here, which allows me to port this back over into my Revit. Now, depending upon how many times I've been doing this and what I'm doing this, we have a couple options. I'm gonna go and say all the visible objects that I just did the one, but if I had multiple objects that we were working on, then I can just pick the ones I want to bring back over and use the select option. So I'm gonna go and say okay to that. It's pretty quick. Just popped it over to Revit, and there it is in Revit, and I can zoom up onto it, and you can see there's the material that I have. If I go into the material dialog box here under Manage Materials, we have a classification or a class called Format that came over, and there's the different ones that I have been playing with within this project. When it comes to visibility graphics for turning on and turning off, I pop over here to my import category. You're going to find that we have one that is called Export to Revit. So we have a nice ability to turn those on, turn those off. All right. Next piece we're going to talk about is going to be the shared option. Now this one was, the site was down a little bit earlier today, so we'll see if it's working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into a floor plan here. And then you're going to find this under your Collaborate tab and then Shared Views. Now I already have one that I've shared before, but what I want to do is go and share this plan right here. So how you do that is you hit Share a New View. So it's one view at a time. And we're going to call it Demo 3 and share that. And then what's going to do is basically extract this image up to the cloud and allows you to, once it gets done, you're going to get an email that you can send to somebody, or you can go browse for it right away, or you can copy a link and send that link to other folks. Give it a couple more seconds here. Nap time, get a drink of coffee. Okay, we'll give us more time, but as we're waiting, we'll go do PDF. So, there it is. So I can view it in the browser, or I can copy a link. So I'm going to go and say view in browser. And need to sign in. So you have to have a sign in to be able to do any markup pieces, but just to view, you don't. So you have zooming capabilities. You can pan around. If this was a 3D one, you can actually do an exploded. So you can take that view and explode it out. So you can do it. You can rotate the 3D view. A lot of different pieces you can do, but for markup purposes, you got to log in. So let me go and log in for that. All right. So you can see right here is the markup tools that you have. So you can click on the markup tools. You've got the ability to do clouds. You can set up the color that you want. You have the line weights that you want. You can do that. You can do a pencil. Let's do red and thinner line weight and squirrely it around, and then you save it. So once you save it, then it basically allows you to post that information up. So you can see that it's going away and posting that. If I pop back over here to my Revit, you can see the two different options that I have, and I'm just going to let that refresh here, and I'm going to pop over to PDFs, and we'll come back and see what we got. All right, so under PDF export, remember it's not print, it's exporting, and we're exporting PDFs. So when we look at this, what do you want to export? Kind of like the print view. Do you want to support or export out the current window, portions of the window, or sheets and views? And if I go and click onto that one there, I can set up predefined ones that I grabbed or have. What we're actually seeing is 2D, 3D, and sheets. Looks like I have a floor plan in here. I'm just going to click it to get rid of it, and I'll save that. And I just want to export out those sheets. So let's hit select, and those are the sheets I'm going to export out. Now, once I choose what I'm exporting out, how are you going to send that information out? So right now, I'm sending it as one file. So if I uncheck this combined option, I come over here, I can set up now rules for how I'm going to name these different PDFs that I'm creating. So a great one would be setting up with a sheet name and sheet number, getting rid of this information and adding maybe a suffix and a separator for that. In this case, I'm just going to go create one. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to check that back on. And what do you want to call it? And I'll just go and unscore that and call it demo for that. And then where are you going to put it? So I'm going to browse to my folder here and place it right in there. And then once you have that set up, let's talk about how it's going to export out. So what size of paper do you want to have? I want to go and say, let's do a D-size piece of paper. I want to zoom 100%. I want to be in the center. And I think everything else I like. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's export that out. Do you want to save the settings? Now I don't need to save the settings for future. and it's going to go off and export that out. So it does it pretty quickly. So I'm going to pop over here to my folder, wait for it to get there. And there it is. So I'll go ahead and launch that, see where it goes. There it is. So these are the exports that I created. Pretty nice and pretty straightforward. So again, if you have PDF editors like Bluebeam and so forth that you can edit, then you have this ability. All right. So looking over here, I've got my cover that I did, and I've got my demo 3, and there's one comment in my demo 3, so I'm going to launch that over. You can see there's the markup pieces of that. Click onto it, and that will launch me into it to let me look and see what's happening, and I can make comments, I can do reviews and all that stuff. One thing, a caveat that it doesn't do, however, is you can't overlay that over here in your Revit. So it's really just kind of a view. You can see what's happening, but you still need to interact within that piece. And that's the whole intent of this particular tool, is just be able to share this information with people that don't have the ability to get into Revit or have markup tools or work in the cloud. So let me close these down. All right. All right, documentation efficiencies. All right, auto shading in 2-column panel schedules. What this is going to do for us is gives us the ability to display unused phases in gray. Really, at the end of the day, it gives us, this new feature allows us to have less panel templates in our project. So saving time in that. Scheduling enhancements, oh my goodness. Just a whole bunch of scheduling enhancements, starting with shared parameters, shared instance parameters associated with our key schedules, the ability to filter out by family and type, the ability to split our schedules across sheets. And of course, we can't forget now, we have the ability to have schedules with our work set. So we have a work set parameter that we can add for our material takeoff, for our view list, for our sheets, and for our title blocks. Just awesome functionality in our schedules. This is one of my about time features I like. Show our core wall in a plan view. So when we're in a, excuse me, when we're in a medium or coarse level of detail, I just want to see just the core, not the extra layers. And now we have an option to be able to do that. And of course, it plots what it sees. So whatever we have that set, it's going to see that. Just like in early releases where we're able to show our levels in 3D, we now can show our grids in 3D. We have more control over grids than we do levels, simply because where do we want those levels to reside? Which floor or which level do we want them to reside? All right. So let's look at our panel schedules real quick for you MIPS people. So here's just kind of the out of the box one, haven't done any changes to it. I'm gonna pop over here to my Manage tab. I'm gonna go ahead and grab Edit Templates. I'm gonna just use the branch panel default one. I'm gonna come over here to the option set. I'm gonna grab the circuit table, and here's our new feature right here, auto shading for display loads. I'll go and say okay. Up on the ribbon here, green check to finish that off. And now I just need to go and change this. So I'll hit change template. I'll grab that one and I'll say okay. So you can see that all the places that are gray are unused phases at this point in time. Very cool. So again, this is going to help us with all of our extra templates. We can kind of streamline this effect. Looks like I'm doing pretty good on time here, so I'm going to go and pop into two more. Right. So here is a view that is in, looks like fine level of detail. So when I switch it over to course, of course, it's going to show us basically exterior finish and interior finish lines. It's going to show us that. But as we move into our medium and our fine level of detail, it's showing all of the extra pieces, and all I really want to see is that core. So that is now controlled under visibility graphics. So when I pop into visibility graphics and I scroll down to my walls, I can go off and say, go ahead and turn off this non-core layer thing. I'll go and say, okay. Okay, and now we're seeing just the core layers in our fine and our medium level of detail in plan views. Now, of course, if we switch over to course view, it's going to say, hey, you can't do that because course is showing us the overall width of the actual wall itself. All right, next step here is grids in 3D. So what I have right here is a 3D image or a 3D view of just my level 3 plan. So over here in properties, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and there it is, show grids. So I'll hit that edit button. You say, let's show our grids on level 3. We'll say, okay. And now we have grids on level 3. I'll go to unlock my view, rotate that around. That's just awesome. Now, if I switch this to show the entire building, get rid of my section box here, you can see that it's on level 3 still. And I can come back here and say, well, you know what? I also kind of need that in my level 5 view. So I hit the edit button again, I'll scroll down to the bottom, let's say level 5, and now I have grids on level 5. So we have nice control over what we want to see in our views, whether it's a complete 3D view or a section of a 3D view, if you will. We have that ability to nicely display how our grids are going to act. Of course, we can grab them and stretch them as well. All right, and the last one we're going to talk about here is going to be our split schedule. All right, so the caveat on this one is you have to have at least a sheet open. So what I'm going to do here is scroll down here, and I'm going to open up my 2 sheets that I want my schedule to be on. I'm going to go ahead and just tile my windows and zoom out. And then when you click onto your schedule here, up on the top right of the ribbon, we have split in place. So when I click onto that, it's going to see this. It's going to allow you to choose where you want to place them. I'm going to go ahead and grab those 2 sheets here. How do you want to split it? I'm going to split it evenly, but we can do a customize. So I can say I want 6 inches or 7 inches on one versus the other. I'll go ahead and say place and split. Now the caveat to this one is you're placing it on that first sheet. And so you don't pick this one, you need to pick where it's going to place it on this sheet. And by placing it on this sheet, stop moving my mouse, it'll place the second one on the second sheet in the identical location. Now, once you have that, you can adjust your split. So if I really want this one to, now that I see it on the sheet, I want to make it a little bit larger or longer, I do have that ability to stretch it. It's going to update that one on the second sheet. If I delete it, it's still going to keep that one on the second sheet. If I go up to my schedules here, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and collapse all of those, look at schedules, and scroll down to my schedule here. So here's the schedule in itself. You can see that we have a little plus symbol there, and there's our 2 schedules split up. And so I can grab this one, and since it was the first one, and drag it back onto the sheet in a different location, if I so choose. So that's our split schedule option. Very, very cool. All right, so just touched the surface on Revit. Hope this was a great overview for what you got there, but some things that to think about, at least in my mind, is the generated the design piece of it. For the structure folks, they did some nice things with the steel connectors as well. And for everybody here, when it comes to the dialog boxes, it's very tiny in our minds that, okay, that's counts as the 80 plus, but how much time do you spend trying to resize? And now that you have the ability to resize your warning boxes, your multiple line edit dialog boxes, just the whole slew that they're doing stuff in the background. Over here in our interoperability, very intriguing to me is the link inventor assemblies and Revit models. We have phase parameters and view filters and multi-select visibility graphics override filters. For the MEP folks, there is a whole handful of 5 or more fixes to MEP documentation pieces, and of course all the development pieces. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Got a couple more little slides for this one. If you're interested, there's a class that we're offering, AutoCAD 2021 to 2022, to get you up to speed on that. For attending this webcast, you're going to get an email with a promotional offer for that. This was just one in a series of what's new type of things. So we've had a couple other events that you might have missed. To go see those, you want to go to our website. You want to go to the resource section, and then you want to go to browse by type, and then at the bottom of the menu you want to click on the video and webcast, and you're going to get a whole list of different types of videos. What you're looking for is what's new in AutoCAD 2022, because I just did one thing. This is going to be a whole dedicated section on that. If you're part of the infrastructure team, a counterpart of mine did the collections of 2022 for infrastructure, and we didn't even talk about this new thing called Autodesk Docs. We have a whole webcast on that one. And then one last thing here, we have an event coming up on May 19th and 20th. Basically allows us to talk to you folks about some insight of the industry trends that we're seeing and some solutions to help you take your business to the next level. For information about that, you can put it in the chat window or go ahead and look at that web link right there, IMAGINiT.com, Elevate. All right, and just to see a couple of the sessions here on the 19th and the 20th, real quickly, and I'll pass that because we're running short on time. I want to thank everybody. If you have information that you want us to follow up on, we have a couple numbers for you. You can always ping Katana at her email address there or her phone number. You can also ping me. Mine's very straightforward, eoday@rand.com as well. And if you want to call customer care, there's our customer care number. And don't forget to follow us on these nice little apps we have. And so I'm going to go ahead and open up for Q&A. What do we have for questions?
Yes, so I think most of the questions are answered, Eugene. We do have two on here that you might be able to answer. The first one is, are there any new things to help with using Insight for schematic design and energy analysis to compare buildings and system design options to make a building more energy efficient?
So if I'm looking at that, that's from Anthony. We're going to pass that one, Anthony, off to our Insight person just to get you, and I'll have an introduction for him. I'll have him send you an email. His name is Esmel, to be able to answer that question. Off the top of my head, I don't know. So we'll make sure we get you the right person for that one. Mm-hmm. And the other one is the cable trays?
Yes.
Okay. And Reagan, am I pronouncing that right? I'll have one of our MEP folks answer that question for you as well. Do conduits and cable trays have something that works like that fabrication part thing? There is cable trays, and there is cable trays, and there is conduit. So the question would be maybe what does the cable tray and the conduit don't do for you that you want the fabrication to do? And so I can have a tech reach out to you that's versed in the MIP side of the world to get that answered for you.
Yep, and it looks like another one popped up. Any upgrades on how to edit keynotes without using a third-party application?
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. One day is our hope, right? Well, Katana?
Yep. All right, thank you everyone for the presentation, and thank you Eugene and Katrina Again, just a reminder, this will be recorded. We will send you a copy of the recording. And those of you that we couldn't answer your questions live, we will follow up with you via email. Thank you and have a great day.
Awesome, thanks. So the person that asked, Roger, that asked about the vehicle tracking, it does not work in Revit, no.